everyone. Welcome to Beyond the Chat, where we talk to some of the smartest, coolest, funniest marketers we know, and that would be the guests of our weekly Twitter chats. I am Monina Wagner. If you followed us over from today's Twitter chat, welcome. Thanks for jumping over. And if you're new, let me tell you a little bit about CMI. CMI, our mission is to advance the practice of content marketing. We do that with live streams like these, with our daily blog, with our events, Content Marketing World and Content Tech Summit. We do it with our Twitter chats, our consulting work. We are here for you. So on today's show, I am so excited to have this marketer on. He may not realize this, but one of my first weeks at Content Marketing Institute, he was actually a guest on our Twitter chat as well. And I screwed up his name. I misspelled it, and it was this huge faux pas. And I was so worried. And he was just such a gentleman about it. And he completely let it go. And I am so grateful for it. Please welcome Christoph Trappe. He is an author. He is a podcaster. He is a world-renowned marketer. What am I forgetting? Your dad, you're a speaker. What else should we add to the list?
No, it's that list is just fine. But I don't remember you misspelling my name. Plus, it's been much, much worse. I mean, people do it all the time. Don't worry about it. I'm sure nobody ever misspells your name, correct?
They don't misspell it or they don't mispronounce it, right?
It's all good.
Well, I think I could be talking out of turn, but I think you were an early adopter of social media. I've seen you everywhere, and you're always willing to experiment with things too. But one of the things I do remember that I see a lot is that you are a jet setter. You love traveling, right? How has this been being kind of in this pandemic and not being able to travel?
Well, I mean, 150,000 miles in 2019, and I did have a trip here in over spring break. But for the most part, I've been sitting in this chair in front of this mic, looking at that same camera, the same ring light, being in my face. So yeah, it's definitely been an interesting transition. We've made some improvements to the house since we don't really go anywhere, anymore. So yeah, there's goods and bads to everything. So yeah, but how about you? How has your year been?
We've been good. So I've always worked from home, so I don't really travel a lot for work. But it's been weird having everyone else home. So trying to balance having someone in the office and then having two kids doing schoolwork, and it's been interesting. I'm sure it's been interesting for all of us. So where would you, if you had to pick one spot, where are you looking forward to traveling once this is all said and done?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, it's not like we're not planning trips. We just went to Phoenix for spring break. We're going to do a trip to Mount Rushmore, which you can technically drive to from here. So we'll see. And then I wanted to go to Wyoming for another quick trip in August. But I think we might end up going to like the little tip in Massachusetts, like the thing that kind of swings around. It'd be like Sicily of Massachusetts. I'm not sure that's what you call it, but do you know what I mean? It's right up there.
Yeah.
So it's not like we're not going anywhere, but the problem is you can't really travel internationally. It's just too big of a pain. So we'll see how that all shakes out and when we can leave the country again and not be locked up, I guess.
Well, so my question is, you just released a new book. It's called it's Going Live. So will you be going live there? And I also want you, when you answer that, I want you to tell us a little bit about the book.
Yeah, I mean, I go live from everywhere. I mean, that's kind of the beauty of it. You can do it. I went live when we were in Phoenix, actually, live streaming different things. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's just you show off a product, especially on Amazon, for example. But what I found is that a lot of brands are starting podcasts because it's like podcasts are currently like the thing. Everybody's thought, let's do a podcast. Hey, can you come on a podcast? The Onion actually published an article saying that 150 million Americans are still looking for podcast guests tomorrow. But anyway, so a lot of brands are doing it, which I think is great, but they have to build, I already muted it. a lot of brands are starting that. It's a new network, so they'll have 20 downloads, something like that. And what my solution has been to that, not to not start a podcast, but to live stream the recording to all the different channels that you already have an audience on. And I should probably clarify that. I'm not saying record it and then live stream it, but live stream when you are recording the podcast version. And you can have hundreds of views already on those channels because you've built them over the last few years. So definitely something that can help you kind of kickstart the podcast a little bit more than just those couple dozen of downloads on podcast channels.
That makes so much sense. I guess I would never occur to me to actually use the audience that you already have on those channels. And then if you were looking to start something such as a podcast, to be able to bring them over that way. So it makes a lot of sense. Are you not seeing a lot? What was the moment for you where you're like, this would be smart, and why aren't more brands doing it? Are you seeing a lot of brands that are not doing it enough or not even considering it? What made you, realize that this book was needed?
Well, I think it's because we kind of bucket things, or put them in different boxes. And so all of a sudden everybody says, you should do a podcast. You should do this. So we're thinking about doing a podcast. If it's like, if you come to me and say, Christoph, we need a blog post, that's in my mind, right? We should do a blog post. But really, how does it all fit together? How do we get the most out of our content? How do we throw it a parade, quite frankly? And 7 years ago, I would go into healthcare systems. I interview physicians and I write an article from the interview. This is no different, except the interview is now live. And there is no reason it can't be live. If you got to tell me something off the record, tell me when we're done, and you're trying to maximize the content you have. So we don't need a podcast strategy. We don't need a live streaming strategy. We don't need a social media strategy. What we do need is an integrated marketing strategy. How do all the channels work together? And I think live streaming, especially right now, early in the game, it's being favored to an extent on some of the networks, in the algorithms on organic, so you can get more reach. I'll give you another example. Now I learned, this is relatively new, you can schedule the live streams. I don't know if you do that or not, but you can. And on LinkedIn, I scheduled one yesterday for tomorrow and had like 700 views already, just the scheduled post. So guess what? So I got calls to action in there too, and there's not many brands that can say they have 700 downloads of a podcast episode, especially out of the gate. So, try to maximize all the content and not just have one strategy for a channel, one for another channel, one for another channel, work together, be integrated.
So I saw a tweet from you that said, I think it was in the last month, you had streamed 63 hours of content. Did I read that right?
So Restream sends you like a monthly summary, and in March, now we're in April, in March, I streamed on Restream only 63 hours. Now it's probably like 75 hours because I don't use Restream for everything I do. So there's some one-offs, I guess, so to speak. So it's probably like 70 hours that month, but that also includes Amazon Lives. So here's what I do on Amazon. Like, I'm not doing it right now, but I move the camera over there. I got another camera over there, and I'm streaming myself working, and people come ask questions, so that counts. So like a 5-hour stream, I might say 400 words, so it's not like I'm talking the whole time. So that's a little bit of a different model, but yeah, absolutely. 70 hours probably in March.
Well, let's talk about 70 hours. So you said you do some Ask Me Anythings where you just leave the stream up. What else do you do that you try to fill that time? Where do you find your ideas from?
Well, I don't try to fill the time. I just, when I have something to say, I'll say it. I invite guests on the show, and that's another thing I think is really, really important. I think on the chat earlier, somebody said that too. It's really hard for them to just talk by themselves for any amount of time. So invite guests, have a conversation, have a chat. And that really, really helps. I got 2 guests on a show tomorrow, and I'm telling you, that time is going to fly. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to go, like, we're going to get through that time, and there's no time limit. I mean, we could be on the air until we're blue in the face or whatever. But yeah, just find your ideas, figure out the workflow, and make a commitment to how often you're gonna do it. Like at Vox Pop Me, we go live once a week, and when I went on vacation the week before, we went live twice. Otherwise, we wouldn't have been able to do it. Andy Robinson here. I don't know if you see her comment, but hey, thanks for joining us. She was actually a guest on the show. I don't remember if we went live or not. I think we did. But yeah, always nice to see you.
Well, so when you have that much content going live, when we're talking your live streams, we're talking your podcast, how do you keep from burning out?
So you do have to kind of find that balance. So I got a rule now. I don't do more than one podcast live stream. I don't do more than one like a day. And sometimes even that's too much, depends what else is going on. So I do have to kind of be careful with that. So I use Calendly. And so once somebody books a time, nobody else can book a time that day. And sometimes, I block off a week. So you're absolutely correct. What we're doing right now, you can't do for 6 hours a day. I mean, it's going to be exhausting, right? Especially, you have to be on a little bit more, right? You got to look at the camera. There's a light in my face and all these different things. So you can't do that for 6 hours straight. But I think you can do it for 30 minutes, once, a couple times a week, 2 to 4 times a week or something like that, especially if you need the content anyways. Interview your experts on the air and, go from there. There's no reason it needs to be in private. Plus, you're probably doing a Zoom anyways, depending what your business is.
Such smart strategies. And I really love that you've given us just some of the tools that you use and some of the really tactical tips to help the people out there, help our community. Well, one of the reasons why we started Beyond the Chat is because the hour-long Twitter chat was really never enough time for us to really get to know you and our other guests. Mm-hmm. So we have our final question here, and that is question 8. And you are special, Christoph, because I have 3 parts to this question. I don't think I've ever done that before. So maybe it's 8, 9, and 10. So my question for you is, what is your favorite podcast? You can't name your own. What is your favorite live stream? That is also not your own. And my third part is, if there was a podcast that you would like to see live streamed and they are not doing so already, what would it be?
Oh, those are tough questions. 8, 9, and 10. So let's see here. So favorite it's interesting. So one thing you have to remember, every podcast is competing with every other podcast, right? So my podcast, I listen to the Kevin Sheehan show. I listen to On the Mark, that's the research show. I listen to Digging Deeper, Jason Falls, Growth Marketers, Cashing In on Content Marketing, The Influencer Green Room. I'm not going to pick a favorite. Can't do it. But seriously, there's so many I listen to all the time. And then my favorite live stream, same thing here. I got to go through my notifications. There's so many. Meltwater now goes live. Who else? Let's see. Ad Age goes live. We have Marco Nova going live. Vox Pop Me goes live, of course. That's kind of my own, so I can't talk about that, I guess. Who else? There is not that many notifications in here right now. All kinds of people go live, and you really, I would recommend to turn on the notifications to see them. Who do I listen to that doesn't go live? And I wish they would. It's kind of, so this is an unfair question. And here's the reason why. So think about it this way. There are different networks, right? So I listen to podcasts, and that's one use case of how I listen to them. So I got them on in the background. I'm like, okay, what's new on my podcast today? And the Washington football team podcast competes with the Content Marketing Institute podcast or whatever, right? That's in one environment. That's where I listen. I go on a walk. I'll listen to a podcast, Live streams are on the existing channels. I don't think anybody goes to LinkedIn or Twitter or Facebook or YouTube, maybe YouTube a little bit, and says, hey, what new live streams are there today? Nobody does that. They go there for other reasons, and then they stumble across a live stream. So who should live stream? I'm not going to pick one, but anybody that has a podcast, you should try it because you can reach more people, especially if you spend all this time building those audiences. You remember those projects where people says we need to build our Facebook following? You've had it, right? I'm looking at you guys, right? Mom, you've had those. Like, why not try to maximize it, especially right now where Facebook and everybody else seems to favor live streams just a little bit. YouTube doesn't necessarily favor them, but I still like to go there because then it's there for SEO purposes, and maybe at some point somebody will find them. Plus, this is the other beauty. It doesn't take me any more work to stream to 5 channels as opposed to 1. It's like podcasts. It's the same amount of work whether I push it to 2 channels or 20. As soon as I'm approved for all those channels, it's the same thing, same workflow.
I am so glad that we got to spend some time to talk today. Why don't you tell everyone not only where you are online, but how we can find your book?
Yeah, authenticstorytelling.net. Check it out. The book, of course, is available on Amazon, going live. If you search for that and my last name, that should probably find it for you. I'm also really excited. It is available in Kindle, which is the best-selling format, paperback, and then my first one that's now in hardcover. So that's kind of exciting to see. I know you probably maybe can see it back there. That's the hardcover copy. It's kind of cool to see it in hardcover, and hopefully you check it out and implement the strategy. It is, once you get into it, it gets easier every time you do it. 1% better per day, so to speak.
And anyone in the community who does, Christoph and I, we would love to hear how it's going for you. So make sure you let us know. Christoph, thank you so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
You bet. Thanks for having me. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. And for all of you, we will be back here next week. Until then, be well.